أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذي أذهب الله عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome back to all of our classes into discussing Quran and trying to go deeper into it. Imam Ali says that Quran holds so many layers, so many infinite layers of knowledge that we can keep on diving deeper into this beautiful book. And the beauty of Quran is that Quran is not just um, complete on its own, but it completes other scriptures. It comes with a knowledge that completes all the truths that have come before the Quran. And so what we see here is that Quran is constantly alluding to information that has come before it. So the information that Allah has sent in the books of the Old Testament, Talmud, the books of the Jews and the Christians, and so many other scriptures around the world, Quran confirms that knowledge. Quran confirms that information, and we see that a lot of the information we see in Quran is very similarly narrated the way it was narrated in other books. The reason for reminding us about this is that we understand that the information in Quran therefore cannot be completely understood. The layers of information given in the Quran cannot be completely understood if we also don't cross reference it with older scriptures. A lot of the answers come to us when we see the books of the previous prophets and sages. So when we're discussing Ayatul Kursi, it is not like the throne of God was not discussed in other books. And we are constantly talking about the throne of God as the heart of a believer. So, in that reference, we have to understand that this heart keeps coming up, and we're not talking about the physical heart, but we're talking about that consciousness, that awareness, which is deeper than just the physical consciousness of the body. Um, there is a lot of there are a lot of people who are gifted with this sense of separation from the physical world, and who are able to sense the reality beyond the illusion of this life. And from their perspective, which is the perspective of the mystics and the teachers who are aiming to get to that level where they can also sense that separation from the physical reality, we see that some people are gifted with that and some people strive and practice to get there. Either way, we understand that the realities of the soul are universal. We understand that the realities of the inner world are universal. And so, what the Quran is pointing towards is also something very universal. And therefore, truth will align and truth will resonate. It will click with those who recognize truth. So, if someone is open to searching for truth, if someone is open to recognizing truth, if somebody has kept their heart open, they've kept their search open for the truth and saying, the dua of the Holy Prophet where he says, Allahumma arinal ashya kama hiya, O Allah, show me things as they are. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show it to them. Allah is saying, wherever you turn is the face of God. So Allah Ta'ala starts to show them the truth and the reality of things to those who are seeking it. And Quran, therefore, then takes us towards truth if we are seeking the truth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that and it's mentioned in Surah Baqarah that for those people who seek misguidance, the very same book Quran can give them misguidance. And so the one of the most important aspects of heart then is to be purified. It is like a mirror that has to reflect a purity, because the very same heart can be polluted and it can misguide us, and the very same heart can take us in the direction of guidance. All in all the scriptures can come to the human being, and all the scriptures can bring information for us, but as long as the inner heart is not open to inspiration and truth and purity and purification and guidance, none of the scriptures can guide anyone. Therefore, we see that no matter how many proofs we present, each human being will see it with a completely different perspective. So my husband was telling me that they were looking at these light fixtures, and the frame of the light or the lamp to him was looking golden, and his friend was standing next to him and was looking completely gray to the friend. And they were both telling each other how one was seeing golden and the other was seeing gray. And like the way my husband was explaining it was like, it was right there, it was right in front of me, it was golden, and he was calling it gray. And after a bit, he said that I said, wait a second, let me move where he's standing and try to look at it from there. And when he turned and he looked at it from the place or the angle his friend was standing, he saw it gray too. And it was a reflection of the light that was falling on that golden rim in a way that it was changing the color. So every single thing that we experience can be experienced from the inner faculties. So the Quran and the scripture is um, experienced from inner faculties, and the way the inner world will interpret it, that is how the external world will present itself to us. That is how the outer knowledge will present itself to us. And there are multiple dimensions, multiple ways of examining, looking, and forming perspectives about the same thing. And so it goes the same for Quran, scripture, and all kinds of knowledge that we seek. So the heart then becomes a key pivotal device within us to decipher the truth. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in a hadith that through the Prophet that a person who dies striving for truth will die the death of a martyr. Because there are forces of falsehood and there are forces of truth within each one of us. And these forces are constantly at work. A person who is constantly searching for truth is somebody whose forces of truth are still alive and working. And if someone hasn't found the truth yet, but they have just been on a journey of looking for truth, then that shows that this person is sincere in their search for truth, whether from another person's perspective that was truth or not. Right? So, for example, if somebody, like I had this experience many years ago that I was quite harassed on a WhatsApp group um, because it was Muharram and somebody posted something about wearing black clothes. And then another friend from a different school of thought started to um, constantly lecture us and just, you know, went on this tangent of telling us how we're going to burn in hell because we're doing bid'at and all of that. And for her, what we were doing was completely out of line. And she felt that what we were doing was completely against the truth and we would burn in hell. And she kept saying that the reason I'm after you and I'm getting after you is because I don't want you to burn in hell. Now, that is why we become so imposing on other people. That is why we start to say, well, the other person's going on the wrong path, or the other person is losing their way, or they're transgressing. The truth of the matter is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is far more concerned with our guidance than we are. That is why he's sending us prophets. And if we look at the system in the way Allah has worked, first of all, we know and we believe that he sent 124,000 prophets. So we don't even know more than 40 or 50 prophets. So imagine every era having its own teachers and the kind of truths they were teaching, mainly being monotheism. And therefore, when I look at any written scripture or verbal information passed down the generations where there is a mention of monotheism, I consider that individual with their thought as a prophet of light, because monotheism brings us into a place of our perfection and out of non-dualism. And so what we see is that even in the Pharaonic era, we see that there was a time when there was a pharaoh, and his name was Amanathan, if I'm not wrong, and his wife was Nefertiti, and he had this epiphany of oneness of God, and um, he had this insight about the oneness of God, and so what he did is that he shut down all the temples where idols were being worshipped, and he started to sing praises of one God. And we find that in the remains of the hieroglyphic drawings of the Pharaonic era, we find these plates or like stone tablets on which we see the family of Nefertiti with Amanathan. I don't know if it was Amanathan or Akhenaten, but just a second. Check. So I actually did a lot of research into this and created a painting of it. It's this painting, and over here it says that Akhenaten's monotheism was called Atenism, and this is from the 14th century BC. So what we saw there is that he wrote these hymns and praises for one God, and what we see in those tablets that were carved out on the stone is that there is this disk of light in the sky, and they say that Akhenaten created the monotheism called Atenism, right? So they call their god Aten, who is a monotheistic god. And Aten was presented metaphorically like a sun, but as a metaphor of sun and not the sun itself. That sun itself is not God, but God is like the sun. How? Because the source of all life is God, and the rays of the sun are like the existence or the creation of God. So the rays of sun cannot exist without the sun, but the sun's existence by default in its nature gives out rays of light. So sun is not dependent on the rays of light, but the rays of light are dependent on the sun, and sun itself is the source of all light. Now this thinking, this way of thinking about God, really touched me, because we have a Muslim scholar and philosopher by the name of Sohrawardi. And what Sohrawardi did is that he said that God is also like the sun, the metaphor of sun. And the sun is not God, but again, the same thing, that the source of all life is God and the light rays are dependent on the sun. And Sohrawardi's philosophy about God in theology is called the Ishraqi philosophy, the philosophy of illumination. So falsafa Ishraqi. The interesting thing is that both Akhenaten in like thousands of years ago and Sohrawardi who was not too long ago, just a couple 100 years ago. They both come up with a very similar way of understanding God and existence. It's like a theory of life, like what is the nature of God? What is the nature of life? And they're both coming to a very similar conclusion while not being connected to each other at all. This is what happens when the heart starts to be purified, that underneath all the superficial pieces of information, when the heart goes into a state of reflection and heart goes into a state of contemplation, then the truth reveals itself. So what that means then is that we, in order to find the truth, have to work on ourselves, because there are millions of books out there and there is unlimited amount of information available to us on the internet, and we can read anything and we can access any speaker today, and anything can take us in whatever direction we feel inclined towards. So how do we protect ourselves from going on the wrong path, or how do we make sure that we're finding the right information? But the truth is that this journey of getting to go close to truth cannot happen unless you become an explorer, unless you become adventurous about the information you seek and the people you meet and the teachers you speak to. And for that, it is very important that we have some faith. And how do we secure that faith? How do we secure that level of trust within ourselves to finding God, right? Because we're seeking God and we are a flawed entity and we make mistakes and we're not perfect. And if our heart is clouded and if our heart is not clean, then there's a very good chance then that the information we seek and think of as true can be very deceitful. It can take us in the wrong direction. And the simple practice that can take us in that direction of always coming back to the truth is understanding how sincere we are in our hearts. So, a sincere intention is the key to sorting out all our problems. So, in Ayatul Kursi, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they cannot comprehend anything of His knowledge except what He wills. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. So they cannot grasp any knowledge except with Allah's will. They will not be able to comprehend anything of His knowledge unless Allah wills them to. So the next explanation on this that Sheikh Fazlullah shares with us in his Surah Baqarah commentary is, what He wills is the degree of one's closeness to Him. So if we want a part of that knowledge, if we want to be one of those chosen people to whom Allah will reveal His information and knowledge, then for that we have to be close to Him. The more we're closer to Him, the more we have access to His knowledge, and which is directly proportional to one's remoteness or distance from anything or anyone other than Him. So the key here now is that the sincerity of intention with which we seek proximity and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will determine our closeness to accessing God's special knowledge and the truth, hence the truth. And so in order to be able to access that information, we have to work on constantly being aware and conscious of our sincerity in our intentions. And I have talked about intentions a lot, and I repeat it again and again because we're insan, we come from nisyan, we keep forgetting. And what we need to understand here is that the forgetfulness is actually the distraction. The forgetfulness is actually the distraction which Shaitan says that I will sit on the path of the believers and I will try to beguile them and I will try to make them transgress from the truth. This distraction that is fed into us constantly by our mind, we can call them whispers, we can call them waswas, we can call them trickery of shaitan, but that's the way we are built. We have a mind and it constantly produces thoughts that make us get distracted. So, in every moment, coming back to our sincerity and coming back to our motive, because shaitan does not distract us from something very obvious. Um, so, like, if you are trying to work on yourself and be more conscious and mindful, shaitan is not going to distract us into fornication, for example, because a lot of us, who are in this path, who are doing this work for them, that's a very obvious no go area. Or I'm just going to be honest, like, or watching porn. A lot of us who have been working on ourselves, we will not suddenly get attracted into an activity like that because we've been actively trying to work on ourselves. So for us, shaitan doesn't come from such obvious paths. For us, shaitan will come from the back door. Shaitan will come by making some of us arrogant of our knowledge. Shaitan will come and make us feel like we're better than somebody else, like we know better, we have more knowledge, uh, we have better friends, so we're more pious or we're more clean or something like that. So we'll become judgy of other people. We'll be judgmental of other people. Shaitan can come to us by making us feel like we committed a sin and that sin is so bad that now we're not worthy of going back to God. I'm not good enough to pray. There are people who will come to me and say that, I am very ashamed of myself. I tripped or I slipped or I did something and then I felt so embarrassed. I felt so wasted and so dirty that I didn't think that I can get close to God now or pray to Him. How will I present myself in His presence? And that is why I also got a question, because in my talks, I would share the way I communicate with Allah, and I said something like, Allah, you better do this for me because I'm counting on you. And someone messaged saying that, isn't that a way of very disrespectful conversation with God, and shouldn't we talk to God with humility, and shouldn't we talk to God in a way where we say, oh Allah, please bless me with XYZ and I will be grateful. So my answer to that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his own personal relationship with every single person. And some people will keep God at a distance where he's very formal. God is a formal, respectful entity. And then for some people, God is like the bestest of their best friends. And if God is saying that I'm closer to your jugular vein, and if God is saying I am between your self and your soul, if God is saying I am with you wherever you go, then imagine the kind of intimacy and closeness God is proclaiming to have with us, which we sometimes don't recognize. So God is saying that he's closer to us than ourselves. So if I talk to God with that kind of intimacy, it just brings me closer to God. It just brings me in further proximity to God, where my each move and each action and each thought is constantly being discussed with God, because I have decided that I'm going to build a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where He's always accessible to me. And that is the beauty of Ayatul Kursi, that we use it for protection, because you can need protection from uh the difficult situations in life, where we are inclined towards doing something sinful, or indulging in something inappropriate, you know. um that is why God is saying, I don't go to sleep, and I'm not even drowsy, and I'm always listening, and I'm always watching, and I'm always with you wherever you are. Because when a human being is alone, then the tendency of sin goes up sometimes, because you don't want to ruin your reputation. I mean, a lot of what we do can be happening in the privacy of our homes, bathrooms, or whatever. And we want to be mindful of God's presence all the time. And that is what the conversations with Allah, the relaxed, casual conversations with Allah, bring us closer and closer and closer to Him. And so, what ends up happening is that when you build a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where you, without any hesitation, can pose any question or any dilemma or any thought with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it's saying that you have come to a level of relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that nothing is hidden between you and Him. So when Imam Ali says, worship Allah like you're watching Him, and if not, then at least imagine that He's watching you. And we can be in a constant state of worship. We can be in a constant state of communion and conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which elevates each of our moments in this world. Because the only thing we need to do is to be conscious of our intentions, conscious of our sincerity to our life, to ourselves, to our souls, and being able to be accountable for every moment in our life. And that is the biggest walk on Sirat Mustaqim, to fall out of that awareness, to get distracted and forget that you are also accountable for this moment and this moment and this moment. And as I'm talking, I'm realizing that the way I'm explaining it can sound very taxing. It can sound very like burdensome, like you're under like the watch of a camera constantly. And so the more we get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a relaxed way, the more it doesn't feel like a burden then. Because if you're thinking that a policeman is watching you on the camera and is going to fine you constantly, then staying under that radar feels very taxing. But if you felt like a really good friend who's constantly there to support you, guide you, take away from you your burdensome responsibilities, help you out in your difficult chores, fill you in with energy, light, guidance, support, advice at the time when you need it, give you love when you're feeling lonely, calm you down when you're feeling too riled up, then that presence becomes a gift. Then that presence becomes an honor. It becomes something that you feel privileged for having. And the more we get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more He's saying you will get access to that knowledge. How does that happen? Is that once we really start believing that He's with us. I'm just going to finish this point and then see if anybody has any questions. If we really start believing that He is present, like a real entity and not something absent or abstract, and we start having these conversations with Allah as if He's in front of us, then He will not let you down. He will also give you reason to believe that He's also constantly talking to you. And after a while, when you will ask a question, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer it for you. He will talk to you. He will give you that answer. You will get a reply. And you may have noticed that sometimes you would ask, like, how am I going to do this? And a friend walks in. Or I don't even have a clue where to start. And some help will come from somewhere. Just today, I received a gift of a Janamaz prayer mat. It's one of those where you can, pull it up and then you get a backrest to sit on it. And it's a really cool thing to have because it's padded and it's soft, and you can sit on it with a good backrest when you're in a mosque listening to a talk or something. I saw it like 6 months ago, and I forgot to buy it, and then I don't know, I didn't know where to get it, and I'd been, hoping that I'd find it somewhere. And today, when I saw that that gift came in, and somebody said, "This is a gift of Hajj somebody sent for you," I looked at that packet and I said, "I hope it's that." And when I opened it, there was this inner like a surety that it's gonna be that, and it was. And no one in my home has even seen it or knew about it, that, oh, we have these new kind of prayer mats where you can get backrest or whatever. And so you see that wherever you turn is a face of God constantly having this conversation with you. Initially, you have to put your faith in and bring yourself closer to God and start talking to Him. And then eventually you will start noticing how He answers you back. He's constantly replying to you, He's constantly listening to you, He's giving you evidence that He's there, He's watching, and He is literally answering you. And some of the biggest gifts of that is when you have an intellectual question, or you have a loop in your mind, like you have a knot and you can't find an answer, and then you kind of discover an answer, or an answer pops up in your mind as a deep insight. And that is where that conversation or that communion or that proximity to Allah will open that door of intercession, where Allah is saying, no one can have access to my knowledge except the ones who I choose, and He's choosing the ones who are closest to Him. And the ones who are closest to Him are the ones who are the most sincere in their intentions. That is why the Prophet constantly says that your actions depend on your intentions. And so I often give this example of Hazrat Musa, and the example that I give is that Allah made someone who had murdered someone accidentally into a prophet. So Prophet Musa, before he became a prophet, he seems to have this temper and a strong like a body, and he goes into the city and he hits a soldier of the Pharaoh, and the man just drops and dies. And because of the fear of his own life, Musa then leaves the town. And we see that Allah forgives him immediately when he says that it was a mistake and I didn't intend to kill him. So we're seeing that it is not the act of murder that is counted, it is the intention that is counted. And therefore, there are millions of people who have, like, all of humanity that has the breath of God in them. They have that compass within them that's constantly moving. They have that inner pulsation of being calibrated again and again to what is good for them, what is the right path for them, to be constantly searching for truth that makes them uncomfortable about the truth. Yesterday I was watching a documentary on the life of Taylor Swift, the singer. And they showed how from her childhood she was really good with playing the piano, and she was making brilliant songs. Like, if you hear her poetry, it's brilliant, like it's superb. And so, like, she's really, really good at what she's doing. And she's growing up with this sense of wanting validation, praise, likes, this culture of fans praising her and validating her. And we look at someone like that, and the immediate thing is that, oh, Hollywood, music, blah, 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 so far away from God. But what we don't know is that what is her inner world like. This is a gift given to her by God, and she's touching so many hearts with her music. But she has her own journey. And what we see is that you see this sincerity in this girl who is doing what she's doing with a lot of sincerity and passion. And she says that my diary from when I was 13 years old, everywhere I have only written one thing, that live your life to choose good, live your life to do good, live your life to be good. And that was something that she that was drilled into her. Be a good person, be a good girl, be good, be good, be good. But then she says that it came to a point where I got addicted to being good and then being praised for it by people. And then she says that an episode happened when she's 17 years old and she's winning the best female singer of the year or something at some award ceremony, which was earlier usually given to Beyonce. And Taylor Swift is standing on the stage, and Kanye West comes on the stage and openly disrespects her, insults her in public. And on the stage, the moment which was supposed to be her crowning moment is completely marred by this obnoxious event by a senior artist. This is how Allah works in his beautiful ways. And what happened in that moment for Taylor Swift is that she says that I thought that the entire crowd that was saying what that was booing at Kanye West, she thought that they were booing at me. They were like, boo, right? Taylor Swift is standing on the stage and Kanye West is standing on the stage and they're saying boo. And she's thinking that they're saying that to her. So she walks off the stage feeling like everyone hates her. But that moment, which apparently looks evil to us, apparently looks bad to us, really changed something in her, because after that, a lot of scandals started coming, a lot of hate speech was created against Taylor Swift. The media got crazy, people got mad at her, and they started saying very mean things to her. And she's this innocent girl who didn't have a clue what's going on, trying to be good, trying to do good, do her work sincerely. Because I don't go into all this celebrity news a lot, I had no idea about her past. So I wanted to look at her life from this perspective. And so what happened is that she said that when everyone started hating me and I fell and I had none of that praise and likes and super cheering crowds like putting me up and making me into a queen, I had to rely on myself and my own journey to understand what that validation was doing to her. So, from wanting to be a good person to getting addicted to being praised to be a good person to then having all of that break down was actually like the breaking of a cocoon for her, that she was now finding her own wings. Allah didn't want her to be dependent on the praise and the validation of the world. And now this girl is evolving into a person who goes into silence for a whole year for self reflection, for finding her balance, for finding her grounding. And you see that now when she comes back, she's recounting in this video, she's saying that I was a quiet person. I never took a side. I had no political voice. I had no passion to speak for truth. I was just minding my own business. I just wanted to be good. I wanted to have a good reputation. I wanted to be on the top of the charts. I just wanted to do everything right and never have anybody resist. But here, Allah puts this situation in her life that despite all of that, she's standing at this crossroad where her reputation is ruined even when she hasn't done anything. And so now what's happening is that she's growing. And after that, she starts to speak up and she has a political opinion. She realizes that in her own state, in Tennessee, there's a woman who's standing up for elections who doesn't believe in women's rights or integrity of women, etc. And so she now starts to voice her opinion to the extent where she gives out statements, and she starts to write music to encourage people to stand with the truth. She's starting to write music to encourage people to do the right thing. And you see that automatically life is guiding a sincere soul in the right direction. So a lot of times when as parents we get um, bogged down by the world and how the world is a bad place and the influences are so bad, and you see like your child is going in this weird direction and you have no idea how to control it, especially in the teenage. um I honestly have seen this because my own children are quite old now. And I have seen that, in the toughest years, when I felt helpless as a mother, um, I felt like Allah takes us in a direction where we have to let go of that control, because it's not humanly possible for us to monitor or helicopter a child's every single move. And the best thing that we can do is, again, having this regular constant conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and constantly handing over our worries and constantly handing over our anxieties and panic regarding ourselves, our life, our finances, our children on to God. And you'll see that if you keep at it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts to answer those conversations with something that makes sense, something which is like a miracle. Um, and I have seen that, I know a couple who were really worried about their daughter, and they saw her getting into a wrong relationship, and then they took their daughter for Umrah. And when the daughter comes back from Umrah, automatically she's a changed person. Another story that I know is that there's this child who's gone into all kinds of risky behavior, and the mother is trying. But, one time a therapist said that some people, some kids, some teenagers will identify with themselves as rebels. So they feel that it is their identity, it is their characteristic, it is their quality to be rebellious. And they will stay very loyal to that identity. So, what will they do is that if you praise your child for something good and you say, "Yeah, you did so well, I'm so proud of you," they will take it in the opposite direction, because they don't want you to be proud of them, because their identity is to be a rebel. And it was such an eye-opening insight for me, where this therapist said that gauge the personality of your child. Sometimes your child might do the opposite when you're overly like cheering for them and you encourage them. So anyhow, this mother was really struggling, because if she doesn't praise the good in her child, she's not going to praise her child for doing risky behavior. So all she did was kept talking to Allah and kept praying and kept praying and kept praying. And then the child just chose to become friends with somebody who had had a change of heart. Like, this new friend was somebody who had taken to religion and faith in God. And in their past, years, they had been into wrong activities and risky behaviors. So now this person's child has automatically been put into a friendship with somebody who is now guiding the girl that, look, don't do this. I used to do it. It's not good. And now I do this. And now I'm choosing this path and that path. And Allah has put this connection and friendship where the girl is listening to the new friend. That only Allah can do. We cannot do that. We cannot curate, we cannot plan, we cannot force our children to become friends with someone. On the contrary, you tell your friends someone should be their friend and they'll run far away from it, from that person, because they'll be like, if that's my mom's choice, I'm not being friends with them. So a lot of times things are not in our control, and they can never be in our control, because the only one entity that controls, who's the Qadir Mutlaq over everything in life, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a lot of times we are put into our place and we are taught how powerless we are when we face situations in life where we can't control certain situations. And then your faith comes into play, and then your practice of conversing with God moment to moment comes into play, and your prayers come into play. And so, you know, a lot of times spouses will have difference of opinion, and you know, the father thinks it's absolutely wrong for the child, but the mother feels no, it's good for the child, they learn to be more brave or adventurous. You know, or the father feels like, oh, the child should be, you know, sent to some camp and it's really far, and the mother feels like, oh, the child is just going to get spoiled forever. But we can be respectful, we can be noble in our character, we can exercise the power we have to the extent that we have without ruining relationships, without being disrespectful, doing as much as we can. But beyond that point, then it is actually our challenge in faith. Can we now see this situation being perfectly curated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because He knows that there is some good in that. And then can we hold a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He's the one with all the power and He will bring something really good out of it? And you won't believe how many, I mean, I'm sure you guys also know, but I see so many people come to the path of guidance, come to the path of faith because they've been through a rough time in some bad company, or they've had a risky behavior which got them into trouble, or and Allah knows what works for their psyche. All we have to do is that try our best to the maximum, and then be in a state of prayer and communication, constantly handing over our anxieties, and then having this perfectly good opinion of God that all good is from Him. And this situation, which is not in my control, is also from Him. And He knows why He's allowing this, why He's permitting this situation to unfold like this when I have no control, when I can't do anything about it. And so what that does is that is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Fatah, هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ. When we put faith on Allah, then Allah will increase our faith by proving to us that He's there, that I'm not going to let you down. You put your faith in me, you put your trust in me, now you see what I will do. And He will, and He always does. We have to have the openness to see the good that comes out of every situation. That's one thing. And we also have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in the extended Ayatul Kursi that we say, Allah says that I am the wali, I am the friend of the one who believes in me. So Allahu waliyul ladina amanu, the one who will believe, I am very close to them. I'm their wali, I'm their guardian, I'm their protector. I'm the one who sets things right. I'm the one who changes hearts. So many times you can't communicate, and you see that a lot when children are growing older. You can't communicate your worries. You don't know how to communicate things. And even if you see your child in pain, or your spouse in pain, or anyone that you're having a strained relationship with, leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tell Allah that you can guide them better than I can guide them. Your words are better than mine. Your way of guidance is better than mine, for sure. And so Shaykh Fadl Lahiri says, going forward, he says that the verse of the throne is a verse of protection, for if one abandons oneself, you let go of yourself, you move yourself out of the way into the knowledge that Allah rules and encompasses all. So if you can like push yourself out of the picture and you come into a state of recognizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Qadir, matlab, He is the one who controls everything. He's the one who encompasses everything. His rules encompass the world. Then one will be held and protected in his love and harmony. It's when you let yourself go and you throw yourself in Allah's embrace of warmth, love, protection, that you will see him manifest that harmony, love, and protection. And that's why it's called leap of faith. The more we take the leap of faith, the more we grow stronger in faith. And for that, we have to constantly hold a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to be constantly in a state of contemplation, in a state of shukr, in a state of gratitude, in a state of counting our blessings. When children are small, I see a lot of mothers struggle. But a lot of times Allah kind of puts us in a situation where we feel really cornered. We feel really, frustrated. We feel answerable. We also feel like, what am I supposed to do or not? And I see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of puts us in like a pressure cooker, and that pressure cooks us. Like Rumi says that there's a whole poetry that Rumi has written on the chickpea. And the chickpea is complaining and saying, you planted me in the garden, and then you harvested me with so much love. And then you took off my husk and you let me get dry or whatnot. And you were so gentle with me and you nourished me and you watered my plant and whatnot. But now look at what you're doing to me. You've put me into a pressure cooker and you're cooking me and you're cooking me and you're cooking me. And the person who's cooking is saying, look, don't worry. The more I cook you, the softer you'll get, the tastier you'll get, the more nourishing you'll become. And that's how we are in this life. That some situations in our life bring softness within us, remind us of how we have to be the bigger person. We have to be the forgiving. We have to be the nourishing. We have to be the emulation of godliness. When God says that I love you more than 70 mothers, and especially as a woman, to understand what God is like a mother. God is more feminine in his nourishing, nurturing nature. How can I activate that? And having this faith that, okay, if I am in this situation and if I go through with this situation with faith, then the outcome will be really good in the end. Having that faith moment to moment, that even what is looking really obnoxious to me, even what is looking out of control for me right now, surely if I can't plan it, surely if I can't interfere in this situation, then it is Allah who's planning it. It is Allah who's interfering here. It is Allah who's taking care of this situation, which is beyond my control. And if it is beyond my control, then Allah will surely take care of it. And Allah does. So with my little ones, I always saw that, if I feel worried about leaving them in the care of someone else, I don't feel like I can trust anyone, and I don't want to leave my baby with anyone. And I'll be like, Ola, I just can't take care of this baby right now. I have to go to sleep. I've tried my best. And I'll wake up and I'll find out the baby was also sleeping, or something or the other. That was very comforting. God is in every moment. God is showing himself to us everywhere. We have to open our eyes. We have to open our hearts. We have to be the ones to have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all of that we have to do with a consciousness towards the sincerity of our intention. And sincerity of intention just means to be deeply inner contemplative, deeply innerly reflective about, why am I doing this? What is my motive? What is my destination? What do I want to gain out of this? Whether you're scolding your child, or you're having an argument with a spouse, or you have to have a conversation with difficult people like boss or in-laws, whether it's about anybody or anything. Just give yourself that moment of going back to your motive behind whatever you're doing, then allowing yourself to go through that mental process of coming to a place where your motive feels aligned with your soul, with your sincerity, with your truth, and then moving forward and doing it from a place of calm and pause and faith. Because, like I always say, that fear makes us rush, fear makes us feel it's an emergency. We have to grapple and sort out this situation right now. But faith says it can wait. So, giving it its due, time in the sun, and then taking that pause and then coming back to it with the right kind of realization, the right kind of presence, and the right kind of motive, intention, sincerity will always lead you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taking care of whatever your matter is. So our time is up now. I invite you all to come into a state of prayer, of humility as we close our session. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, enable me to nourish and strengthen my bond with you, and allow me to be in a state of constant communion with you, to be in a state of constant communication with you. Open the channels of my heart, open my intuition and wisdom, and allow me to hear your words, allow me to hear your conversations with me. O Allah, enable me to be so close to you that you will open the treasures of your knowledge to me. O Allah, we are full of flaws. We are not worthy. We are full of mistakes. We don't deserve these gifts, but we come to you because you are the master, you are the king, and you are worthy of being asked, because we keep that hope from you that no matter who we are, in your generosity, you will always make it possible to share these treasures with us. O Allah, endow our hearts with healing, love, and your light. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Thank you everyone for joining me today. And if you have any questions, I can stay on. Um, and if not, we can close the session here, and I'm going to stop the recording.